Here we go again. I'm back out walking and talking, taking the dog out and trying to get some more miles in the legs in preparation for this trip to Peru. And that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, the preparation that I've been doing. Now, a lot of what I have been doing is not just in preparation for this trip, but it's a series of lifestyle practices and changes which I've started to do and get into, which have helped me over the last year when trying to get into a good mind space and to essentially try and keep myself on an even keel and try to make a few changes as well to certain mindsets and certain conditioning and ways of living, ways of thinking that I've had over the years, which I thought were in much need of an upgrade. So some of the things that I've been doing, obviously I've talked about reflecting and introspection. Some of that started I suppose it's always been there to a certain degree. There's always been I've always been a pretty pensive, reflective guy, but I've been challenged to go through the layers a little bit more and kind of break out of that narrative that I've kind of had about myself and my life story. And as lots of people can, they view themselves in a certain way, and they're used to thinking that way and peddling that kind of that story about themselves and why they do what they do, and a lot of it is it doesn't come close really to really describing who you are. It's more about who you think you are or who other people think you are, and you kind of go along with that. So I've been going through the layers of that and trying to get a little bit deeper and trying to get to the core of who I feel I really am. And part of that started when Danielle and I were having struggles a couple of years ago, and we started to go to couples therapy, and then we both have done a bit of individual therapy as well, just in terms of trying to delve deeper and get some insight. So I did that for a period a couple of years ago, and that got the ball rolling, and then I've since kind of gone with that myself in a more, let's say, holistic approach, more kind of self-healing, because ultimately, as much as there's a lot to be gained and can be gained through therapy, and it's certainly nothing to be kind of ashamed of, and in the world we now live in, I think a lot of the stigmas, hopefully, regarding that are being dispelled. But also, I think it's just, it's just like having help with anything, whether you have a personal trainer, for fitness, or taking the car to the garage. It's just somebody that with a bit more perhaps expertise on something that's able to essentially help you along and get to the bottom of certain things, and it's certainly a useful tool, but there's many people that are probably a little bit fearful of that, a little bit fearful of delving, perhaps don't see it as a worthwhile thing to do, or it's not for them, or they're worried about if people find out that they've gone to see a therapist, what will people think? Will people think they're nuts? Will people think they're mad? Will people think they've got major problems? There's so much kind of fear and worry about what other people think about stuff. But if you think it could be helpful, it's definitely something that I would recommend. And since then, it's become more, as I said, about my own introspection, my own journey, reading, and I've learned, through that, through certain podcasts, through certain people, through certain books that I've read and listened to, which I'll talk about a bit more after. I've started meditating, And that's something that I have or had never done probably until about 3 or 4 months ago. And so, I'm not claiming to be any kind of expert. I think that's quite often the worry that people have about these things, is that you kind of think, and I certainly did, how the hell am I going to be able to sit there and clear my mind and kind of, act like a Tibetan monk or something, like, how do you do that? But it's not really, it's not a competition. It's not about perfection. It's not about getting it right. And it certainly doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong if you're still thinking, if there's still stuff going on in your head. It's just good practice to put down your phone, put stuff down, take a bit of time for yourself. If you do it in the morning when you wake up before you start your day, it can set you up for the day. It can kind of relieve stress levels and kind of get you ready in the right frame of mind for the day. And if you do it before bed, it can help you sleep, and the two things coincide, like it's kind of good to start the day and finish the day with, if you're able to, and if you can do that. It doesn't have to be for an hour. It can be for 5 or 10 minutes. There's lots of guided meditations out there, which is what I followed for the most part when starting, and still do from time to time, which just helps talk you through it and explain how to do it. And there's tons and tons of people on YouTube. There's tons of free meditations that you can do, and it's got so many benefits. And I've had some crazy meditations where I've literally broke down in tears, or I felt like some connection with love across the board. I've had some revelations. I've had some thinking, like certain thoughts have just dropped into my mind that kind of suddenly cleared certain things up for me and made sense. And also it can just be really relaxing and quite blissful if you're able to get into a certain space. Again, I wouldn't say that I've been completely on it every day. I've certainly gone through periods where I've been, I've done it for a month straight without missing a day, and then I've gone through a week or two where I haven't done it. And when you have got busy lives and you've got kids and all the rest of it, sometimes it can be a bit difficult, but there are ways around it and ways of fitting it in. And one thing I found is my kids sometimes jump in with me, and we're all kind of sat around doing a little bit of meditation whilst their attention span lasts, which isn't usually long, but at least they're seeing their dad do things that hopefully will help them out going forward as well and serve them a bit of mindfulness. Other things I've done, journaling. Again, I was never an Adrian Mole or a Bridget Jones growing up. I never kept a diary. Certainly wasn't, in my very macho sporting world with all my mates. Certainly wasn't something that I felt I was drawn to going home and scribbling in a diary, but it's actually a really, really useful thing to do. And it's, I don't claim to do it regularly or daily, but I do find it helpful when I sit and write things down. It helps to collect your thoughts. It helps to review things and look at the stages and what you're going through, if you are going through something, or even if you're not going through anything and everything is hunky-dory. It still helps with just getting a bit of a gauge on where you're at, making a bit of a record of it, and gives you something to reflect on. People are always taking photos and using that for nostalgia, and sometimes it's great to have things written down, so you're not just looking at a snapshot and a picture, but you're actually reading through where your mind was at, where you were at emotionally at any given period. So I found that really pretty useful too. I must admit, I haven't done a whole load of breath work. I've started to do a bit of that. I've started to, and that's all part of meditation anyway, so certainly breathing is a big part of meditation. And for me, it's something that I realised about myself over the last few years, that, as strangely as it sounds, I don't breathe very well. I've noticed myself when I'm been filmed, or when I've been captured, like in a little video or something, or when I'm talking, I've noticed that for the longest time I wasn't breathing freely. I'd gasp. You can feel a lot of stress and anxiety. You can feel it and you can see it when you're not breathing properly, if you don't learn to breathe properly. And you think of it as obviously an innate ability, which it is. Obviously we all come out and we all start breathing, but I think over the years you can lose or have never really known a healthy way to breathe. So some very good books out there. There's obviously famously Wim Hof, who is very, very that's very much part of his method, is breathing, and I've read some of his book. I haven't finished it yet because it's kind of teaching you a whole method, but I've been working my way through that and trying to learn some of that, and there's some other very good books out there and guides for it. Along with that, mentioning Wim Hof, there's obviously the cold exposure. I haven't started ice bathing yet. I've done that in my sporting days a little bit in terms of post-recovery after games and exercise and whatnot. But I've been doing the cold showers quite regularly, which really does shake it up, and putting yourself under stress. There's lots of benefits for that, for the immune system, for your body. And certainly it gives you a jolt of energy for afterwards, that's for sure. It's quite shocking, and it's very good. It's something very good to good practice to do. So if you're able to do that daily, there's all sorts of benefits from it. I wouldn't say I do it all the time, and I don't do it daily, but I do it pretty frequently. And as I said, I'm only part way through the Wim Hof book, and I want to keep following the various steps in there to try and take a little bit more of that on, and try and bring that a little bit more into my life as well. I've mentioned obviously reading and podcasts. Quite often you can see I've got the earphones in here when I'm out on my walks, or if I'm in the gym, or if I'm driving around in the car. Usually I'd be perhaps listening to music. It is good not to always have headphones in when you're out in nature, because it's nice to listen to the environment and connect with nature a little bit. But also I find that on long walks it's just a good bit of me time to actually listen to books. So I was put onto the audiobooks back in January. A few people have mentioned it to me. A good friend of mine, Russ Port, told me that he'd got through quite a few books. He was never an avid reader until he started with Audible. And another friend, Marto, we had a good chat in a hot tub swimming, or I should say relaxing and chatting, back in January in the mountains. And he just told me about how many books he gets through now as a result. So I signed up to Audible back in January, and I've probably got through 15 books this year, which is probably more than I've done in the last decade, more books than I've read in the last decade. Now, I still read, traditionally the odd book. It's nice to, have a book by your bed and maybe read at night before you go to sleep a little bit, or when you can. But because quite often I found myself pretty knackered, pretty tired at the end of the day, I'd get into bed and I'd probably get a page or two into a book and then just start falling asleep. I was really not consuming that much, and I was struggling to really get into books, especially more heavier kind of scientific books, self-help books. They're not exactly page turners, some of these books. It's different when you're reading a novel, or maybe a good narrative, an autobiography or memoir or something. But when you're reading stuff that you want to kind of take in, but it's not naturally something that you're going to want to sit there and read page after page after page. I found doing it through audiobooks, I do take a lot more in, and even though I'm not taking in as much as I would in a studious way, sitting down and highlighting and writing notes, which is a great thing to do, and if you're that way inclined, it's really a useful thing to do because it probably helps you to retain the knowledge a bit more. But I find that if I was to do that a lot of the time I probably would be put off, and I'd see it as too much of a chore and too much of a task to do. So I rather just go with it and free flow, listen. And I know that I won't absorb everything, but I absorb enough. I get the gist, I get the idea, I get the concepts, lessons are taken on. And yeah, even though perhaps I won't always remember all of the facts, I can always go back over, listen again. And I quite often buy hard copies of the books as well that I've listened to, just to remind me that, you know, I've read that book, but also to be able to refer to and go to, and if there's any things that stand out, I can go to that book and highlight it and go through it. So these are just some of the things that I've been doing over the last year. They've been extremely helpful for me. It's all in kind of, well, they're all beneficial things for life in general and for living hopefully a healthy, you know, well-rounded life and informed life, and trying to get the best out of yourself whilst you're still here. But also they've been quite key things in preparation for this trip to Peru, especially as I'm going to be going into quite a psychological deep dive in the jungle with the ayahuasca, as I've mentioned. I don't think anything can truly prepare you for that. It is really going to be quite an extreme experience, but at least I've been able to research fully as far as I can without actually doing it yet. I've been able to, you know, read extensively, read testimonies, watch vlogs on people that have done it, watch documentaries, and do just about everything I can to try and mitigate, you know, some of the risk involved, because it's not a highly risky thing, you know, in terms of if it was something I felt there was a high amount of risk to it, I wouldn't do it, because I've got two beautiful little girls that are the be all and end all for me. But I think by not being reckless, by doing my research, by going into it with open eyes and having clear intentions, I think, and I hope it will be okay. It will. I will learn a lot from it, even if I may struggle with the experience and it may be difficult. And I think hopefully I'll come out with a bit more insight, a bit more wisdom, and maybe it might bump me along this journey that I'm on a little bit more. You know, they do say that there's a good, you know, it's been said that literally hundreds of hours that people spend in therapy can be compared to 1 or 2 ayahuasca experiences. Whether or not that's true, who knows? I suppose I'll be telling you in a month or so's time, after I've been through it, collected my thoughts, and feel I'm in a place where I can talk about it. But in the meantime, you know, I'm going into it with clear intentions. I've done my research, and yeah, wish me luck. Anyway, guys, this is a long one. If you've had the patience to listen to it, fair play. I'm not sure if I would have. Yeah, I would have. I listened to way longer stuff than this. But if you have, and if you find it interesting, great. Thank you. Bye.